Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining today. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
I guess yes. And if you're in chat, let us know if you saw the banner, because we're still fighting with this banner issue apparently, with Nikki not being able to see it when we go live. So
hey, it's a surprise. Hey, great. We're live and you didn't know it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe it's a StreamYard setting where we added the intro and the go live button. I don't know.
Yep. So happy 2025, Nick. Did you do anything fun over New Year's?
Yeah. Yeah, we just had a lot of relaxing holidays. Did a very quick trip to Disney World again, and then flew home early to avoid the snowstorm.
Is there a such thing as
get
a
home
quick
just in
trip
time
to
to be
Disney?
snowed in? Yeah. I mean, I guess it was a few days, but it was enough. It was busy. It was nice because it wasn't 99 degrees with like 120 degree heat index, but it was very busy. So
yeah, if you're gonna go, I'd say winter time's the right time to go when it's actually in the 70s.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, glad to hear it.
Much enjoyable versus the summertime heat for sure.
You got to know the kiddos had to love it. So great way to start off their new year. Give them something. Give them some Disney. Give them some good times.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
How about you? Did you have any fun entrance scenes for the break?
Not really. We had family come up to Colorado for the first time, so they got to see the house. So, had family up for that for Christmas and also, almost to New Year's. And then for New Year's, me and the family, we went to a symphony where they play a movie, and then they do the musical score with the symphony. So we watched Harry Potter's Prisoner of Azkaban with the symphony undertone. So that was, I'm not a huge symphony guy, but that was pretty cool. I have to admit, it was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, well, I saw one of those with one of the Star Wars movies, and that was quite enjoyable for sure. So
I would do the Star Wars thing. I wonder if they'd let me bring my lightsaber into the show.
Yeah, there were definitely people dressed up, and they had like characters there, like before the show, walking around too. So like, I think lightsabers would be allowed for sure.
Very cool, very cool. Well, so we're gonna kick this off. So this episode, by the way, everybody, welcome to season 2, right? So I can't believe that we're in season 2, episode 1, coming into 2025. But we're gonna have a friend of the show back on today. So we're gonna bring on Cote. How you doing, bud?
I'm fine, doing well. Everything's peachy. I'm still forgetting that I have to write 2025 instead of 2024. I used to, y'all are old enough, but remember this used to happen with checks all the time.
Oh yeah.
You'd be running around buying that half and half late at night, and writing your check, and you'd write the wrong date on there. It's I
don't get it right till somewhere around May or June is when I finally start getting the right year down.
I also think it's only within the last 3 years that I think I have memorized the order of the months and the numbers that represent them. And I can tell that because every time someone says a calendar, I do that second grade thing where I repeat it in my head. I'm like, May, 5th month.
Right.
April, 4th month. So I maybe 10 more years, I'll just do it intuitively.
Well, and we do the month, day, year, but doesn't the European Union, don't they do it day, month, year?
That's right.
That would confuse the hell out of me.
I think there's probably a Harper's essay about what that says about the way these cultures think. Do you care if but do you need to know the month first, or do you need to know the day first? And what does that imply? about what's going on.
All right. What's your insight? What do you think that implies? You
Oh.
open the door.
Well, I mean, what it would, thinking it like an engineer, which is always dangerous, it would imply that if you want to know the day, you're already aware of the context of the month. And so like, you already know it'd be like if you were telling time and you said, if I said, hey, Nikki, what time is it? And you said, it's 13. And I'd be like, oh, because I know it's 1 o'clock. So it's 1:13. So like, if you put the day first, that's assuming that you know the context of the month, because then of course the next thing you want to know is like, yes, but which month? Now, it could also be that they arranged it to be smallest to biggest, which like reverse ISO, whatever it is, where you're going, day, month, year, which is the worst way to sort things possible. Whereas I guess in the American system, we're so busy just doing whatever we're doing, wrangling up cows, trading stocks, whatever it is we do over there, that we don't even know what month it is. So we got to start with that.
Wrangling up cows. Is that a shout out to you spending some time in Texas?
That's right. That's, I went back for the late December cow drive.
Cattle drive.
Make sure all those processing plants up in Chicago have their can make their stuff.
Yep, straight to the steakhouse. Right, make sure that they arrived at the right place on time and in the right temperature.
On that note, let me tell you, the meat in America, the beef, phenomenal. I don't know what they're doing over there, but they're doing it well.
Well, I mean, that's what Texas is known for. They're cattle. That's what we're known for.
Yep.
I would say it's probably better in Texas than in most states as well. So you gotta include that caveat. But
go to the source.
Sure.
Now we'll probably have some people from like Iowa and other places in Oklahoma saying, "Well, hold on, no, your beef's not as good as ours."
Big time.
And Oklahoma. I say ours. I'm a Texas boy, so I live in Colorado now, but I'm a Texas boy, so I'll always be a Texas boy. Got the tattoo to prove it. What about Ohio?
I just think of those large
what is
Texas
Ohio
barbecues. Corn.
Corn.
I don't know. Like
I think Ohio's known
for
putting cinnamon in chili. That's pretty much the Ohio thing, right?
Yes.
Is that the Cincinnati chili?
Yeah. No beans. Yeah, the Cincinnati Skyline chili. Yeah, that's what we're known for.
Is there an origin story like someone like there was a rat in someone's like hat and then they bumped up against some open cinnamon and it fell into the chili and they were like, we must serve it, and then that's how it started?
I don't think it's anything that elaborate. I guess I don't know.
Hey, you worked for grocery store places a lot. While we're shooting the whatnot here, let me just ask you one more thing, because you go back to Texas. What happened this time is I have a niece and she moved to Seattle last year. She's from Houston, right? And we were talking, and I think that if you lived south of Waco, you're like an HEB country, right?
Correct.
And I think now they got HEB up in Dallas, but whatever. I think if you're from HEB country, the moment you leave and you come back, within 45 to 90 seconds, you're going to be talking about HEB with your fellow Texans. It just like there's this obsession. So I want to know, Nick, in Kroger land, do people like talk about the Kroger brands that same way? Do they have this loyalty where they're just like, oh, I got to get me some, what's the place the dude shops that Kroger owns? All these things. Like, do they have this like affinity to the brand where they're interested in it, or is it just like they got to get their stuff and they don't really care about the brand?
Well, I think it's something of the brand, but if you look at Kroger and I guess maybe the Albertsons, the company as well, they were going to merge, but that got blocked by the government. They're both a collection of many different grocery chains.
Right.
Very regional. So like that, like the concept was not rename every one of those brands the same, but to keep them their like local regional brand to have that HEB style conversation or whatnot. So I think that's the whole premise behind these two large grocery I guess conglomerates.
So maybe to stick with the theme, there's not enough meat on the Kroger bone. there's a bunch of other little bones that you can't really like latch
Yeah.
onto it like you could like an HEB.
Well, and
Makes
you need a
sense.
translator ring, right? HEB is HEB, but like in Colorado, King Super is Kroger,
Ah,
Mhm.
right.
right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So it's King
you go to
Super's
King
land, yeah.
Super. Now, you know, the one thing I will say about HEB is they were the first grocery store to carry the Whataburger condiments. And if you've never had a Whataburger, it's another thing that Texas is known for. The best
true.
hamburgers in the world. But I was so happy that, you know, you could get Whataburger ketchup and their spicy ketchup from the grocery store. So now that's the only thing that we have in the house.
Yeah, that and you
Mhm.
know, so now all the listeners have had their annual Texas expats talk about
That's
Texas
right.
stores.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Well, I mean, what a better way to start off 2025 than talking about grocery stores and food? I mean, food's important to everybody.
Uh-huh.
Now I want some steak.
Whoops.
I looked
Let's
it
go
up just
back.
I looked it up just to close the topic while I was away there for
Mhm.
a second, and it's Ralph's. That's the grocery
Yes.
store I was thinking of.
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah. Ralph's and is a
And
Kroger.
which we
chain, for
learned,
sure.
you know, a Ralph's loyalty card might be accepted as an ID card, depending on who's asking about it.
Yes.
All right. Well,
Very nice.
let's get us on topic. Review the scorecard for 2024. What do you think, Michael? What do you think, Cote? What do you think of 2024 and how it went? That's big developments.
Well, I think you know, there's all sorts of things, but the two I was thinking about that would be relevant to us here is, I mean, obviously obviously you got the AI stuff. Lots to say about that. But I think where it's ended up, and this discussion is still continuing, which is fine. But I think maybe we've settled on, in the enterprise space, this idea, maybe the names will change or whatever, but the diagrams are good. We've settled on this idea of what agentic AI is, and or not even what it is, but that it is a thing, and a little bit of what it is. And there's I forget her last name, but there's this person, Chip, who's got a great blog, that Adib, who's been on here, he as they used to say, hipped me to, and she this week her O'Reilly book on AI engineering came out, but you can read on her blog like lots of stuff, and she has a great overview. I don't know, we're talking about 2024, and I just mentioned something from January 7th, 2025, but she's been talking about this, and other people have a lot. But it's I think if you look at her post and what other people have been doing and the evolution of the idea, it's there's a, what would you say? Not optimistic. There's like an overly clever way of thinking about it, and then just like a generally useful, right? And the useful way is just like, all right, so if you look at like what an LLM does, I never know what I'm supposed to say. But if you look at what it does, you go to a command line or whatever, and you write in, I guess you use curl or something, and you write like one string of text, and it spits back some text at you, and you're done. You do this one-shot thing, right? And to some extent, to say something is agentic means beyond that, in the sense of like, because if you think about it, like when you're using these chat things, they have all sorts of stuff going on. Like they keep track of the context of what you've been doing, the memory. They send that back each time, or however they do it, so that it has the context of what's going on. You can upload files to it. You can like suck stuff in from Google Drive, all this sort of stuff. So all of that stuff that you wrap around just that simple like call to do something, I think is the beginning of what agentic AI is, right? Now, then the second thing that people make a distinction on that I think is interesting is the, to some extent, what I covered is like read only. Sure, you're like writing stuff to it, but it doesn't like do anything. And so I think the next hope that people evolved over last year with agentic stuff is like it's actually going to write, so to speak, like do something rather than just telling you what's going on. And I think kind of a is there such a phrase as an early culmination? I think towards the end of it kind of being settled, Anthropic came out with this thing. I forget what it's called now that I'm looking at it, or the Model Context Protocol, or MCP.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you look at it, I mean, like all proposed standards, if people don't use it, it was just a delightful idea. But essentially, it defines like a standardized way to do the basics of what I was just describing. How do you how do you pass something into an LLM and have it pass it back? How do you connect it to other data sources and other function calls it might want to make? And then if you actually want to like have it do something, how do you do that? Now that's a really bad gloss over what it does. But what's nice about that is if you have a standard like that gets adopted, then not only do you have the technology that you can use and stuff like, Spring, which I think has MCP integration, you can it makes it easier to use whatever is compatible with it. But there's also, maybe it's not sneaky, but a lot of people don't realize it's happening. You've also kind of like given a point of view about what an AI app is, right? Like AI apps are things that follow this pattern, which I think would be useful because looking forward on this, it would be good for people to just like start doing stuff and find out what's useful to do with AI things beyond. Google's pretty good about cataloging like hundreds of like little things that people do with AI stuff, but it's not like, Mercedes built a car.
Mm.
Well, I mean, and to your point, I think, talking about Anthropic, they just came out with, what was it, Sonnet 3.5, which actually can control a computer, right? It can move the mouse, it can browse the internet.
Right, exactly.
So you're getting into that part where, AI can start controlling things. There was also a release, and man, I'd love to get your take on this, Nick, but they played a chess game against AI, and AI cheated.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the game. So AI went in and changed the game so that it could win, and they cheated. There's both good parts and bad parts. We all know Gen AI hit 2024 like a wrecking ball. I do wonder is AI going to be the parachute pants of of 2024, where everybody's got to get into it and not everybody looks good in them. So I wonder if that same thing's going to happen, because we see AI in a lot of places where maybe it shouldn't be, but we also see an AI help people in their daily lives like never before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
my mom refused to buy me parachute pants. It was.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Terrible. Well, they were expensive.
Or
they were
a pro move, probably, right? Back in the day. Yeah. But on the AI front, right? So I think CES is happening right now. So we're like very early 2025, but a lot of announcements around hardware and like NVIDIA, and I think the NVIDIA released a lot of models around like world. I think it's how I forgot what it's called already. It was like a world foundation model that's based on like for robots, essentially, like doing like physical things like in the world versus some of these large language models that aren't really geared for that. So I think there's going to be a lot of just general interesting things continuing. Like I just feel like we're still scratching the surface on what's going to happen here, and then obviously lots of new hardware launches and things that help drive that. And maybe
I like how they have kind of like a Benioff Salesforce view of the world, where it's like, let's go to every domain that humans interact with in their life and see if we can sell product into it. Like whether it's robots or like all of science, all of reality. Like how do we figure out moving our product in there and experiment? I'm sure that creates shareholder value and usefulness when it sticks. But it's good to try it on all sorts of stuff. Spread the butter on everything and see if it works on doors, toast, eggs, windows, whatever.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I know we're talking 2024, but I want to go back to, what Nick said about hardware. I mean, NVIDIA just released their Project Digits, right? The supercomputer for $3,000. I know, Nick, you're probably just salivating over this concept, but being able to put an AI computer in front of developers, what's y'all's opinions on that?
Yes, I'll take two. You can cluster them together, but I guess my biggest question is that how what's the supply on those going to be, and how much will they be sold over MSRP type of thing. But yeah,
initially probably quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
You'll see the whole eBay jump up price thing like they did with games things. But my question around that is okay, we're putting this computer for AI in front of developers so that they can work with their LLMs locally. But what's that going to look like getting these things to production when you're using something that powerful as your dev? Are you going to be able to match that? Are a lot of companies going to be able to match that in production, especially at that cost point?
It'll be like the Docker days where they just plug their laptop into the right Ethernet cable and then you run that.
Right? Yep, that's kind of what worries me, right?
Yeah, I mean, of form factor like that, it certainly does. Like it does. Like I guess $3 to however much you have to pay for it, $3,000 to $6,000 depending on like scarcity. It does seem like a lot, but depending on what you have to couple it with, you add in more money. But if it actually does something valuable, obviously it's nice. And you have to think like as far as those simple use cases, there's like the the use case of like, I forget who does this. Was it McDonald's or Burger King or Chick-fil-A? But you could start to have like basically an AI talking at your drive up window, which might be highly annoying, but I often wonder if it might just be better and more accurate and give people a better life, because it seems like doing the food preparation and talking is like difficult. But the alternative, I guess, would be to like buy a gigantic honking thing or have a really fast, not secure as in secure, but stable internet connection to doing it. So like, I don't know. I mean, I bet their fryers cost more than $3,000, and they're just as core to how they run their business. But yeah, I mean that is, I hadn't thought of that angle, but that is interesting to think that. I mean, could you have a case where your developers have something more powerful than you can use in production?
I'm guessing. I mean, if this comes to fruition,
I mean, potentially. Well, I think some of that is that what hardware they have available, right? Because like if these companies get like an H100, H200, or some of these high-end enterprise graphic card, like that's gonna be I think much more horsepower than these digital
right
boxes, so.
And maybe there's even a I don't know what you call this kind of thing, but there's a enterprise procurement annoyance gap where if you have a software developer and something costs $3,000, there's a chance they'll buy it themselves out of pocket and then develop their applications to run on it. But then you go back to the enterprise and they don't want to pay for it. And then you have this like misalignment where, I mean, that would be hilarious if like centralized IT couldn't fit the bill that like an individual employee could or wasn't willing to. So that would be strange if you got consumer tech, if you had that kind of angle in there. But anyhow, AI stuff, it was great.
I just love the fact that me and Nick, when we did the whole home lab, we all got to talking about the Mac Mini and the M4 Pro and what Mac was doing with some of their chipsets, and then here comes NVIDIA with hold my beer and watch this, right? And they come out with this Project Digit. So I thought that was interesting. But again, AI, it is helpful. Are we overusing it? Right? I don't know if any of y'all have you looked at like Rufus on Amazon? I'm sorry, Amazon, but Rufus is not helpful. But you look at some of the things to go in and create notes for you during your Zoom meetings. I think those are extremely helpful. So finding that balance, I think, is going to continue to be a theme throughout the year. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, right? Like I think in 2025, that's the at least two of the things I want to see with AI, kind of in a way of implementing a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, is one, in order to use something, you need to have it, right? So for example, there are some places, maybe like where we work, where we don't really have a lot of access to AI stuff in our corporate world, right? Like we use G Suite or whatever it's called, Google Workplace, and in our personal life, or if you pay for Gemini, or you can get that stuff all in your own Google Docs, like for your personal life, right? And it's like fine. But if you don't have this stuff turned on in your work environment, if you think about like what a lot of people how they spend their time and where their productivity is, a lot of it is at work. And so until it rolls out to everyone, it's not really going to have much impact on anything, right? So that's like the first thing is like whoever's setting policy for things in companies, they need to figure out how to like allow people to use stuff. It's kind of like speaking of, old timer think, like there was a time when it was like, I'm not sure if I'm going to give you email, right? Like that might be a little weird, right? And so, or instant messaging and all these things. And then, I mean, the second thing is once you do have that, like I think in all uses of AI, whether it's consumer, personal, or an enterprise thing, the big problem comes when like you need the data. And like that's where things start to get like very difficult. And then you run, this is something that was written about quite a lot last year that I think is true, is like once you're talking about corporate data, you're basically trying to like solve a problem that has rarely ever been solved, which is getting access to the data. Like never mind cleaning it, but you know, we joke about on you know my one of my other podcasts, Software Defined Talk, that like this is why CSV files are like the secret integration and how the world runs, because like it's not like you can just get access to Tableau or Salesforce, but you can go have lunch with that person who can export a CSV file, right? And so like, you know, AI is going to be in the similar area, or enterprise AI, where like it's not like the conversation is going to be any different. You're still going to need to figure out how to get that data. And then even more so, because it's not going to be just CSV files that people are importing into Excel. And so I don't know. I mean, I think that gets back to like this whole, like I was talking with someone earlier today and like, you know, all this agentic stuff is like the marbling around a piece of beef, to go back to our beef talk, right? Like it's the stuff that actually makes the beef good. Like it turns out if you don't have a bunch of fat in your beef, it's not good, right? Or it's not as good as it can be. So you got to wrap all this other stuff. And this person said, oh, yes, that's day 2, which I think is a great analogy. All the extra stuff you need that wraps around it. And I think that's, I think why the agentic discussion I think is interesting, is it's trying to define all that fat that's around the steak.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point on the security side, right? So when we're talking, you know, from an individual perspective, we've got access to just, you know, a plethora of AI tools. But the enterprise is locking down on that because they're concerned about leaking data. They're concerned about breaches. Do you get kind of into a mode of diminishing returns there where, you know, your employees are like developers? If you don't allow them to do something, they will find a way. Does that make it more risky for enterprises to lock this down and not put some guardrails around it versus saying, okay, we're going to adopt it and let you use it, but here's your restrictions? If you just allow the employees to go do what they want, they're going to use these tools anyway, but there's going to be a lot of copy paste. And it seems like that might be a bigger security risk.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think I think we learned that lesson over and over again. So hopefully this time the CISOs and the auditor people will get it right, and they'll just solve it next year instead of, you know, anyways, instead of triggering what you're saying, is that like the problem will happen even if you try to lock the doors.
Well, let's get back to 2024. So 2024, one of the biggest plot twists I saw in 2024 is PaaS is making a comeback. CloudFoundry is being reinvigorated. People are understanding what a platform as a service can do for you. Cote, I know you've written a couple things on this. I've written a couple things on this. We've talked about it on the show. But, you know, I won't say I'm surprised, but I'm happy to see kind of this reemergence of a platform coming back in instead of a bundle of parts.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think you were there, Nick. I think I in thinking about this episode, you know, at CloudFoundry Day in Germany, is it Julian Fisher? I don't actually know how to say his last name, but he had a good talk called the CloudFoundry Renaissance, and it was kind of like the CloudFoundry community take on what you were just saying, Nikki, of like to summarize, he delivered it a little more gently. Although the snickering in the room, you could tell they were making up the snark in their heads. But it was, you know, he basically laid out, I think what the conversations you have with that at least I have with a lot of people is like, yeah, we spent lots of years building out the Kubernetes clusters, and now we have that, and now we need a platform on top of it, and so we should talk about platforms more. And of course, you know, he brought up the kind of the CloudFoundry angle on things, and as he was saying, and if you want to run Kubernetes, you can run CloudFoundry on that too. And I think the kind of call to action he was having, aside from the project that NE9s was starting and that he kind of launched at the end there or whatever, which is fine, was like, so we in the CloudFoundry community, we should start doing more. right? Like we should get back to the activity. And I think even more so, like even more detailed, what he was saying is there should be more of the community doing things and not kind of waiting around for, as we would say now, Broadcom and SAP to kind of like move things forward, which I think is great. I think those of us at those big places should also encourage that to, going back to what you're saying, Nikki, is like, I don't know if I have charts and my usual bag of like stuff like that, but the sense that I get is everyone not done as in the slangy way of like, I'm tired of it and I don't want to do it anymore, but I think they're finished with building up all their Kubernetes stuff. And as you kind of see, or not kind of, as you see in the platform engineering community, they're like, oh, now we need a platform. And so like, hopefully over the next year, that will be kind of like what we see more of is like, let's focus on the platform layer and not worry as much as we have been about like, I don't know, eBPF. I don't really know what that is, but it seems like a pretty low level thing for a bunch of people to be stressed out about or even excited about.
Yeah.
Well, and you got that.
Yes. Oh,
And you got that balance, I think we discussed this on LinkedIn. You got that balance of, we're always talking about the developers and making things, the developer experience, but you have to balance that with the operation side as well. If you have a platform that's good for the developers, but it requires a whole team of operators and it's very difficult to maintain that platform, that's not really a win either, right? Your developers are happy, but your platform engineers are staying up, 23 hours a night to keep the things running. So, this was one of the things that we saw Broadcom come in and say, hey, we realize that people do want to use Kubernetes. We realize that we've got this product called CloudFoundry that people love. And by the way, CloudFoundry Foundation, their new slogan, it just runs. Couldn't think of a better thing to talk about with CloudFoundry. But, they're bringing in Tanzu platform. They're trying to make a singular platform that lets you decide how, what underlying tech you want to run your containers on, but still give you that kind of CloudFoundry experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe as a the kind of looking forward version of this or side of this, like I think you and I, Nikki and Nick, the two Nicks, we talk about this a lot. But I think especially if you're watching something like CloudFoundry Weekly, I think it's good to start thinking about in calendar year 2025, like how can you start to like bring a certain coolness to the CloudFoundry world, right? Like. We have, and I think going off of what Julian was saying, right? Like, there are things that I don't know, the two companies he mentioned, the two large entities he talked about, Broadcom and SAP can do. But I think also like when I look out in the thought leadership, the conference scene and stuff like that, like there's not really a lot of talks about what's going on in the CloudFoundry world. Now, maybe people are submitting those talks and they just don't get accepted. But like I would encourage you if you're a CloudFoundry person and you like CloudFoundry, like go like look up your local DevOps days. There's a bunch of SRE days, a bunch. There's several SRE days, and just kind of like look around for conferences and meetups that you can speak at. And like I almost not almost I do think that there has been a what would you call it? What's a word? People have been for some reason reluctant to talk about CloudFoundry as much as they have about other things. But I think like in 2025, the community should be like, yeah, I'm going to go give a talk about Bosch, like Dr. Nick did in 2014, right? Like, because it's good. Like it's just as good as whatever else, if not better. And so like, it would be great for people in the community to just talk about it more and not, like in my mind, I'm trying to not to make analogies to like U.S. politic vibe shift stuff because that would be on the wrong side of what I'm trying to make.
Oh boy.
But like, it's almost like you can go talk about that stuff and start doing it more, and that'll help us all out.
Well, and we did see community. So, 520 and Any9s, they announced that, I believe it was they're partnering with Any9s, but they're bringing back the Stratos UI, right? So they're bringing back something to make that easier. That was a good announcement. And we are starting, again, when we went to KubeCon, worked the CloudFoundry booth. This was KubeCon, but we got a lot of people into the booth at CloudFoundry who saw their first CF push. And really, it kind of blew their minds because they're like, it can't be that easy. Well, it is. You just showed it. But, I think that kind of leads into one of those other discussions is there's become almost like this religious war between CloudFoundry and Kubernetes, right? Um, you can't do CloudFoundry. It's old technology. It's got to be Kubernetes, or it's the vice versa. No, CloudFoundry just works. Why would we want to try something new and more difficult? I think there's in 2025, we see the Karifi project bringing Kubernetes into CloudFoundry. We see Tanzu Platform trying to do the same. I don't think, we've got to get back to kind of an outcomes discussion of what is it your enterprise is trying to do? What do your developers need? And how can these two technologies work together? It doesn't have to be this kind of religious war where you got to pick a side. I mean, you're going to pick a side,
I don't think
but you don't have to be full for it on it.
Well, I think the main focus for I think a lot of organizations will be how do I build, or where do I put these new applications I'm building, and they're most likely going to have some tie-in to AI, right? Because that's where all their innovation budget's probably going right now. So I'm building all these new AI apps. I need a platform to put them somewhere, and the underlying technology, how that works, is maybe not going to be so. Um, so not the key focus. It's going to be how do I build this app that has a chat bot or does XYZ thing. So the delivery of that, not necessarily the huge focus there. And I think that's where something like CloudFoundry and all the work we've done around AI and the Gen AI tile comes in play pretty nicely. So we'll see where that goes. Hopefully, it's just more of a how do we focus on delivering a great platform and not kind of get away from those debates, so to speak.
Well, and I don't know if you guys, got to watch any of the things from KubeCon, but I think we did see, back to your discussion about Gen AI, I do think that we saw some of that from KubeCon, right? Is that, hey, we've got a niche here with Kubernetes is we can do really good things in the Gen AI space. And they talked a lot less about, this is a place to run your workloads, more about this is the place to run AI. I think that Nick, the project that the Gen AI tile on CF kind of proves that CF can do both those things. CloudFoundry can support Gen AI, can support language models. We've got Postgres that comes in. You can have kind of a data center in a box. I think that was really interesting from KubeCon to see almost, maybe it's just me, but a perceived shift away from, hey, run all your workloads on Kubernetes to, hey, we're a platform for AI. And I think that's one of the ways that I see them working for in 2025.
That makes sense.
Yep. I don't know. I think I just shut everybody up with that statement.
No, yes, I definitely agree. And I if we look at like our episode counts, or I guess view counts, like the top 3 of the top 5 episodes, 3 of them were AI themed. Yep. So the spring AI episode with Adib went really well as our episode with David Wu as well. So yep. I guess we should probably put those in the show notes too. If you haven't checked out those episodes, you should give that the whirl. Oh, and yeah,
John's trying to start a fight.
No. So I know John quite well. We previous colleague at that large retailer. I guess we should talk about this story. The referring to, if you haven't seen the comment about condescendingly referred to CF as Fisher Price Cloud, as there was a quite a spicy debate back in the day a while ago about certain developer didn't have enough control or didn't like CloudFoundry because it was too easy, and like this kind of like, yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it super simple for people to get started so that anyone could like the whole like Fisher Price Cloud like little popper thing that you pick up the kitten, just kind of like the toddler picks it up and it's just popping popcorn or whatever, and it was like a pretend lawnmower or something. That easier for developers to use the platform. We're like, yeah, that's a good thing, or they viewed it as a bad thing or whatever because they wanted to build their own bespoke platform, that type of thing. So that's where that conversation goes into play. But I think that's still very true today, where people some people want to build, I think a vocal minority in developer land will want to build a bespoke thing on their view of the technology, but 80 to 90% of the folks just want to like get their job done, build their app code, and like use something that just works. So I think that, obviously CF ties into that quite nicely. But that was the story behind John's comment. And shout out to John for watching the show today.
So do y'all think, based on what you said, right, they want to create a bespoke, do you think there's, is that being based off of, hey, I want to make sure I keep my job. If I'm the only one that knows how to run X, Y, and Z, then they can't get rid of me? Or is it just really this concept, if it ain't hard, it ain't work?
Yeah, it's definitely more the latter, I think, for this individual, or just
Gotcha.
overcomplicate things, so to speak. But
Yeah,
too much time on their hands.
Yeah, I mean the way I also think about it is people who build things like to build things, and so like, if they don't, we've worked with Pivotal Labs, now Tanzu Labs people a lot over the years, and you can tell they like to build applications, right? And so they have come up with I wouldn't say a wasteful, but a very difficult way of doing application development, because it's a lot of work and crosses a bunch of different domains. But the people who do it, it's because they like designing and developing product, right? You could have an option where you're doing application development where you just you take, do they call it a PRD? I forget, but you get the big wireframes, you implement the wireframes, you ship it, and then you go home, right? Whereas like the more what's the analogy? You're playing it on hard mode. The more hard mode of doing application development is that you actually like go observe people doing it, and then you iterate over your software to make it fit what they're doing more, right? And in that instance, the application developers like to build applications. And I think if you go down the stack, there's developers who like to build platforms and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. And I assume there's also people who like to assemble, code and binary and assembly. Like someone's working down there at ASML doing some crazy stuff, whatever they're doing. But, I always think, well, they should come work for us because that's what we build. And you should have the application people build application stuff. So it just depends what people are into building, and they need to figure out how to apply that to what's useful for the organization they're working in.
Man, I bet that guy that likes to play with binary and assembly code is just the life of the party. I imagine he's just a whole lot of fun to spend time with. All right. Well, this question's for both of you. What are your predictions, knowing that we're seeing this reemergence of platforms? You got any bold predictions of what's going to happen in the platform space in 2025?
Well, my main prediction is that person who likes to code in binary, he either has no joke or just one joke. That's pretty much all he or she has.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've done a little bit of predicting here, but I think I'm always bad at predictions because I often say what I hope happens instead of predict happens. I mean, I guess if I'll give a hopeful prediction, right? And it's kind of a culmination of a lot of what we said. Is I'm hoping that we have just a return to application development. And what I mean by that is sort of the path of this agentic talk is that if you kind of look at what MCP does and you look at the wider universe of like AI middleware, at some point you can say like, all right, application development, right? Like in the same way that like databases change things and event queues and mobile, you have a new technology that can be used as a feature in just application development, which is great because we know how to do application development. Not everyone does it, but like we know how to do it. And so it doesn't have to be a big mystery. So whatever benefits we're going to get from AI stuff, it doesn't have to be difficult. Like you can just slot it into there. So that would be nice. Now, the dark, the cynical, the bad prediction of that would be that what we were just talking about is as we saw in the last cycle of platforms, right? Like we built up all this past knowledge, and then around 2014, 2015, everyone started getting enamored with Kubernetes, and we were like, how about we just totally pretend like all that past knowledge from the past 5 years didn't exist,
right?
And let's start from the metal, not really the metal, but let's start from the whatever level, and like let's just build up from the top. And then as we were discussing, you end up in this position of the last couple of years where you're basically like, oh, now we need to build a platform. And everyone's forgotten that you had this platform that was totally fine. And so if that kind of thing happens with AI-based applications, where instead of incrementally improving what already exists, adding in AI support to it, thinking about it as just not just in a dismissive way, but as a way to make better the better things that we already have, and instead you just start from scratch, then it's going to take us, I don't know, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years to like really get broad mainstream value from it. Just as we saw with cloud native when Kubernetes came and like table flipped all the PaaS stuff, and now we're like, you know, we had to come up with a whole new science to replace DevOps and SRE called platform engineering. We're having to build all these things. There's a whole new bevy of startups doing stuff here and there, et cetera, and so forth. So hopefully the AI crew will not feel the need to reinvent everything, because it'll just slow down growth and progress and the further evolution of civilization as we know it.
Well, and on that topic, I mean, you know, when we're talking about the platform as a service, things like CloudFoundry, things that just work, they're seen as old technology, but they're still relevant. And I think a lot of people can't get past the fact, well, yeah, but it's a decade old. It can't be that good. But it is. So I guess my question for both of you on this one is going to be, you know, knowing that it's coming back, what are kind of some of your wish list items that you would like to see in the platform as a service, the CloudFoundry ecosystem, things that would kind of, you know, get that mindset of it's old out of people's mind and get them looking at it again?
Hmm. Uh, um. So some things I think that I know, you know, Tanzu's working on, but I guess I'd like to see more is that you know, you have this concept of like federating like foundations and things like this you know, we talk about like global application deployment, global load balancing. The more integration there to make that easier, I think would be cool. Um, so I think things like that just make overall like app development better. I do think the Cloud Foundry space hasn't played up enough of their services marketplace area. So like, you
Agreed.
know, the data services, obviously the Gen AI tile, but as I think the community can explore that a lot, because I still don't think I think that's still a relatively large hole,
Mhm.
that you know, especially when you're talking about running on premises. And I think that's another thing too. That's been kind of like there's been this kind of like underlying theme of like uh, this whole like go all in on public cloud is kind of crazy cost perspective. So maybe we can run stuff on our own data center, and that's tied into oh, we have all this AI stuff. Maybe we can run, you know, private AI workloads too. That'll all kind of, you know, coalesce as well. But having large, you know, cloud services or large, you know, cloud native apps running on premises, you need that data tier, and Cloud Founders has had a great story around that, deploying kind of rock solid databases and messaging and middleware for quite some time. So I think a lot of people will kind of look into that again as well, for sure.
Cote, I want to
Yeah.
get your takes, and then and there's a comment that I do want to make on something Nick said, but what's your take first?
Well, you know, I work in
Mhm.
marketing. So like I don't really know technical stuff very well. And I think I went over my main thing of like what I want to see happen, which you kind of mentioned this towards the end, Nick, is just like just awareness and talking about stuff more, right? I mean, awareness
Mhm.
is the outcome. I don't know if it's a business outcome, but it's the outcome of this activity. But I think the activity is just talking about just what happens in the Cloud Foundry community, the people who run it, in the same way that you see other communities talking about their technology all the time, right? And I think
Mhm.
it's a solid enough community that if we all kind of work towards it, we can make it happen. Whose motto is "Make it happen"? That's not. That's anyways. Uh, you know, we
Is that Granger? I don't know. I feel like
I don't know. I feel like that might just be something that all companies say
yeah.
internally, but like so that's something that I would want to focus on, and I think as part of that, and this is where the excuse that I work in marketing is a big disclaimer. You know, like when I go to explorers and I talk with people who are like the community leaders, or like in our case, like the Tanzu Vanguard people, like they bring up a whole lot of like operation stuff that I don't really even think about, like, you know, I don't know the words for it, like global storage replication and high availability and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of that, like, you literally and figuratively don't get for free. and I, you know, there's
Mhm.
not like how that stuff like is basically handled and has been done in the CloudFoundry world for 10 plus years. It's not really a story that's out there very much versus like if you I don't know what your experience was Nikki, but you know, you go talk to the various startups and people at KubeCon, and they're just like, we finally solved the problem, right? Like we
Yep.
have like
Yeah.
data replication and ways of doing stateful apps and stuff. And I think one of the things the CloudFoundry community is, you know, not in a condescending, like jerky way, but be like, yes, welcome. You know, I guess the jerky way of doing it would be to say, welcome to the party, but more just like talking about like, here's how we solve that problem. And here's, you know, here's a hygienic, a healthy way of leading your life if you care about those kind of things.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I 100% agree with that. You know, kind of going back to some of the things that Nick said, there needs to be a push to let people know what Cloud Foundry can do. It's almost been kind of stage cast as, you know, it fits into this box. We run, you know, very simple apps, and that's what Cloud Foundry does. And they do, you know, people don't realize, you know, we've had this conversation internally and with customers about, you know, customers are looking for a DBAS. How can I easily push out data services, be able to manage them and update them? Man, the answer has been under your nose this whole time, right? It's been Cloud
Mhm.
Foundry.
Right. No,
But
and that's a good concrete example right there.
Yeah.
so,
Well,
you know, I think that, you know, for my wish list, I think that the Cloud Foundry community, those that contribute to it, need to see that, you know, it's not just a workload, you know, platform. It can also be a data platform and contribute to those things. We do have gaps with some of the replication between foundations, but we're seeing a lot of improvements in like MySQL and Postgres with their backups and their streaming backups to really make this a service. But you know, we keep hitting up and, you know, internally, you know, as much as externally, we keep hitting that wall of, well, yeah, it can do all those things, but that's not what it's for. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? If it does it and it does it well, who cares if you think that's what it was made for or not? And I think we need to start advertising those use
mm,
cases out. And I think we need to start building on those use cases, especially with AI coming in. The need for data is going to get a lot stronger. So, how can you make that as easy as you can on the operations teams and the developers? And then I'll go ahead
yeah,
and
I
post some
think from
comments
the
as well, but go ahead, Nick.
from the use cases. So I guess looking back to some of the favorite experiences with this whole podcast this year have definitely been the CF days where we got on stage during, you know, presented, and we were able to get Dativ in
Mhm.
Europe, and then Comcast and JPMC, and to have real world CF users share their stories, especially these users who've been in production for quite some time at, you
Yep.
know, incredible scale. It's just that's kind of like the highlight really for me, is to hear the stories. It's quite difficult to get them to publicly share their stories, just because they have to go through a lot of you know, red tape and PR and, you know, press relations type of things. But uh my goal, or you know, hopes and dreams for this year is to get more users to share their stories, whether that be like via like a live stream here, you know, remotely, or somewhere at a conference in person. So hopefully we can do the same with, you know, Cloud Foundry Day, the Cloud Foundry days this year, and maybe other conferences as well. So
That
Well,
is a
the stories are
great
out
point.
there. Yeah.
on that point, you know, to throw out another thing, like you mentioned, you know, I think you know, the users that you had, you know, there was Greg from Comcast, and I forget the guy's name from JPMC, and then Jurgen from Dativ, and probably some other people like here in Cloud Foundry Weekly, and then you moderated a panel at Explore US, Nikki, with some people from Schwab, which
Yep.
for various reasons I ended up watching like 4 times. And it's a great panel because it lays out everything that you were just talking about, right? Where here's this company like moving trillions of dollars around a day, I think, or at least billions. I forget exactly the figure, but and you know, amongst many other things, they rely on Cloud Foundry to make that all work. And so you can hear a lot of the stories about you know, directly from those 4 people about how they not only use it, but think about it and integrate it into their business. And then, you know, you can find a link to this, but there's another talk with I forget his name, but someone, to your DBAS point, using database stuff in the Tanzu platform at Schwab. And
Yep.
that's equally good to, what's interesting about that talk is you can see the kind of enterprise thinking about how do we manage, not manage as in like the little gauges and logs and stuff, but how do we, what word am I looking for? How do we fit, how do we get a database strategy going, right?
Yep.
Like, what are the risks that we have?
Mhm.
What are the needs? How do we think about the people that we work with, open source, and all this kind of stuff? And you can see them walking through that about how they do it at Schwab.
Completely agree. And I think that's something that's left out when we start talking. We named off a couple companies here, big banks, automakers. I don't think that a lot of people out there realize just how many of the applications and the services that they're using from some of these companies are running on CloudFoundry today. And why do they not know about them? Well, again, the squeaky wheel is the one that gets the oil. And if things just don't break and they're never down, you don't hear about them a lot. And I think that is
Mhm.
both a benefit and a detriment to Cloud Foundry and the whole platform as a service system. Is when it works as good as it works, and nobody really, you don't hear about it that often, so it doesn't stay on the forefront of people's minds. And I guess that needs to be a concerted effort from the community to start bringing those topics back up and reminding people how good that can be. And I know we don't have much time left. We do have a couple comments. So Tim Leong, who's been on the show, I mean, his 2025, what he would like to see, CF push on Kubernetes in production on stage somewhere. I'm guessing that some members of the Karifi team would like to challenge him on that, but he did qualify that with in production on stage. But I bet the Karifi team would probably want to jump in and say something on that one.
Mhm.
And then we've got a question. This is going to be for both of you guys because you're going to be the best. So Findsy asked, do you foresee a world that the world will realize the need for a platform for Gen AI faster than they did with the latest tech cycle? I'll leave that to both of you guys to kind of answer.
Yes, because we're already starting to see that in the field with within Tanzu. So I can't get too far into some of that, but I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were talking about it earlier. I think there's a lot of work being done to sort out what that platform is,
Mhm.
and what the stack of things you need are. And like I haven't actually looked at it, but I think I think Menlo Park, that VC firm, like they have some survey I need to find where they've tried to fit together what this platform stack looks like. And once you get the interns at the VC firms like cutting and pasting a bunch of logos into a giant burger on a chart, then a concept has a good chance of like sticking because it's going to be
Yeah.
propagated at the top of the business stack and also used at the bottom to explain these concepts. But I think I mean, speaking of decades old technologies, like it can't just all be Python that you're like wiring together. As great as that may be, you need all that supporting stuff around it. And I get, to rephrase the question, right? I'm rephrasing what I was saying earlier is like, will people in 2025 in aggregate realize that that's a platform? And
Mm.
probably we'll see if they call it a platform or not, or call it something. But like, I think, to add to my hesitation, right? Like, I think people don't think about each of the public cloud providers as a platform. They just kind of think about it as, the big, gigantic, big box Home Depot, Lowe's store, Hornbach, whatever you want to, wherever you live, your big, gigantic store you go to. But, those are kind of sort of platforms. I'm going to get lost in the analogy to the real world hardware stores. But those themselves are platforms. You just don't, they're just platforms that have a lot of things in them, right? And so you
Mhm.
always have a platform. And I think a huge difference, especially in a large organization, is that once you're aware that you have a platform, you get a lot more benefits than just a bunch of accidental platforms that you don't really realize that you have, because you can start taking advantage of all the platform stuff once you know it's there.
Yep. Well, and I think, not to answer specifically on the Gen AI, but pretty much any new technology that comes out, any new opportunity that developers have to make their applications better, I believe that a platform needs to underline that. There's a concept of
Mm.
full stack developers. Let's be honest, how many are truly full stack that know everything? It's impossible with the way that technology is changing to keep up with that. And I think that any type of commodity or platform that helps integrate the thousands of different projects that are out there that can create an opinionated set, to help developers get their applications or get technology out to the masses is something that's absolutely required. I mean, very few people do, if you really think about it, want to go in and they want to play with everything. They want flexibility, but they also want opinions. And I think that's where
Mhm.
a platform comes in really well, is it provides some opinions on how to progress and accelerate your development and your path to production for what you're trying to get out there. And I think with platform engineering, I think platform in 2025 is going to become even more of a thing as more technologies, we start seeing the speed up come up. We've got to help developers and operations teams be able to integrate and accelerate what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and
That was a
I
lot of
do.
words.
No, I guess to add on to, I think the enterprise level, or the the driving force will be application outcomes or application delivery, of like, we need to build this app to do this thing with AI, or whatever, versus maybe some of the previous goals of, like, the C suite have been like, oh, we should migrate everything to the cloud because we just bought this giant cloud contract, that type of thing. It's going to be like, we need to build this app that does this thing because our competitors all have it now as well. So I think it's going to be a lot more driven on the actual focus of the application and the application outcome. And that just naturally kind of ties into, all right, we don't need to spend so much time focusing on building a platform. If we can, we can run on what we have already, or adopt this platform that's working well. Now we can go focus on our building our app issue, or how do we do things, how do we utilize things like Spring AI in our code to do some AI things, or whatever the C level is telling us we need to build, and then deliver that. I guess that's my prediction with that.
And I mean, on the C levels, going back to the platform, when we're talking about that, integration, consistency, and security, those are all things that are going to be at the
Hmm.
forefront of enterprise minds, especially C-suite minds. How can I, make things consistent, which is going to help control cost? How can I integrate new technologies, keep my developers happy? And how can I keep that secure? And, if you let developers go out and do anything, chances are they will, and
Hmm.
you're going to end up getting some potential breaches. So platforms help put guardrails around that, and that's where I go back to, you needed something a little bit opinionated on how you're going to get this path there, and that's where platforms come in. We're almost up at time. Cote, you
Yeah.
want to round us out? What's your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. Well, I think you know, there's a podcast I listen to, the Cloudcast, and
Mm.
there's Brian there always gives out a lot of career advice, and I think I don't have anything to say, so I'm gonna steal something from him. But I think at the beginning of the year, no matter if you run on a fiscal year calendar or a calendar year calendar, it's I think for a lot of the stuff looking forward, I think it's good to start thinking about, in the organization you work in, like what your plans are going to be to kind of fit with what's useful for your organization, but also, as we've talked about, like what's useful for the community that you're in. So that's not much happens in January usually. So this is a good time to like just kind of like go stare at the wall, whether you're at home or in an office, and think like what are some personal business outcomes I want to have this year,
Yep.
and how can I lace that into things. And I think it's, again, especially if you're listening this far to Cloud Foundry Weekly, I would say just figure out doing like at least one thing that's public, talking about like the Cloud Foundry community, and put that in your KPI OKR whiteboard dashboard.
Mm. Hmm.
And we'll use that as
Yeah.
a call out. If you come up with one of those things,
Hmm.
we've got an avenue for you to get that out there publicly. Come talk to me and Nick. Come talk to us on LinkedIn. Something that could be a show. Nick, what
Yeah.
are your
And
final
if
thoughts?
And I guess just to add on that, if you need help getting approval, we have experience working through multiple different corporate communications departments. So let us know. We can help you get justification to do your talk, or you know, get you to where you want to be. So yeah, definitely make it so. Thanks,
Yep.
Tim. But yeah, I guess we're definitely a little past time, but thanks everyone so far for watching, and it's been great to kick off the year. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out at cloudfoundryweekly.com. I should have the podcast version of this up hopefully either later today or tomorrow for everyone listening there as well. So any thoughts, Nikki, before you sign off?
I'm just going to kind of echo what you said. Both you and Cote, I hope we kind of see 2025 go back to more of an outcomes driven. What are the outcomes we're trying to do? Other than, what's the technology we got to use? How do we make this technology work for us? No, let's go back to outcomes. Let's see what is it you're trying to achieve, and then pick the best technology for that instead of picking a technology and trying to shoehorn yourself in. That's something I hope for everybody. But I think it's going to be an exciting 2025. It's going to be neat to see if anything like we get the next gen AI, what's going to be new and hot this year and what's going to come across that everybody's got to scramble for. But I believe AI is here to stay.
Yes. This is the way to
This is the
Mark's
way.
comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always love
All
that.
right. Well, I guess we should. Yeah. Oh, and then too, just coming off the Disney World trip, they when you're going into Hollywood Studios, the security line, they have little signs that say this is the way to like direct people. But there's
Yep.
there's always funny little tidbits that they add in there because they have the Star Wars park.
Yep.
But yes.
Well, Cote,
Cool.
we appreciate you joining us as always, man. Love to hear you talk. We'll keep up the conversations on LinkedIn and other places, and we're going to put some links in for your newsletter that goes out. So if you haven't ever read, Cote's newsletter, make sure you get that. We'll put it in the comments below. But hope everybody has a great kickoff to the 2025.
Bye.
All right.
CF,
CF, bye.
bye.